I'm going to go all Marie Kondo on you.
Ooh, shout out.
If that 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot doesn't spark joy, get it out. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Bing! Slouches.
We're missing a hound.
We are. This could get bad.
So if you hear a dog losing their mind in the background,
Stitch is not with us.
Somebody came to the door.
Who knows? I don't even know where she's at. We'll be hearing her snorting here in no time, I think.
Yeah. All right, so today we're talking about free speed, right?
Free speed. You gotta love that.
Yeah, we're talking about the keys to ninja fast transitions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm Coach Dale Sanford.
I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last decade through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off the couch to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking out Facebook and YouTube at buildpeakcompete, or on that Instagram at BPC Performance, just to make it a little confusing and not have it the same on all of those. All right.
Got to make people work a little bit.
There we go. Make it work a little bit.
One other little quick note, for anybody locally in the Mid-South area who has a child who runs 3rd through 8th grade, we're having our first of 2 yearly distance running camps through our partnership with Memphis Youth Athletics. Mm-hmm. The first one's June 25th through the 28th. That's 4 days, 8 to 11 a.m. You can check out more on our website, buildpeakcompete.com. And get them signed up. It's always a blast.
You know, we said all ages and ability levels, right?
Yeah.
This is some of the younger of the groups we work with.
The 3rd through 8th grade.
Always fun, though.
Teaching them proper mechanics and some race skills. So, all right, before we get to it, shout-outs.
Shout-outs!
I mean, we really can't ignore this one.
If you're an endurance fan.
If you're a cycling fan.
Cycling especially.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amstel Gold.
Amstel Gold.
Looked like the race was over.
Done and dusted.
Looked like the, however long it is, 11K worth of climbing. It's like 6.5 hours, 11K of climbing.
By 11K, he means 11,000 feet of climbing. Mostly on tiny little, they look like golf cart paths.
Yeah, narrow tiny roads.
Little roads.
Mateo van der Poel, man.
Mm-hmm.
MVP. Just decides he doesn't want to be in the group anymore and takes the reins and drives the entire, whoever could hang on.
Yep.
Drives about 8 of the strongest people in the pro peloton to the line,
closing a 55-second gap.
Closes a 55-second gap
6K.
In less than 6K.
Nuts.
Catches them right inside a K, and then somehow has the juice to uncork like a 1,000-watt, 20-second effort.
Yeah, have we seen the data?
I saw his data, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 1,050 watts for 20 seconds.
That was, 164-mile race, I think?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Ridiculous.
That's nuts.
So,
yeah,
King van der Poel.
You know it's beast mode when you've driven the front, and if you've ever been on a group ride or in a race before, you know how much extra energy you're putting out. But to do that and not have anyone be able to come around you. In fact, everyone just kind of sprinted and stayed in their same position, really.
Yeah.
And some people, when he started sprinting, just went backwards.
He drove it up, closed the gap, and then got out of the saddle and went wide, but nobody even thought to jump on his wheel.
And he went where he left the left side open, where that was the downwind side. So he left it open for someone to come up his draft.
He's just beast mode.
Couldn't do it, man.
Anyways.
Strong.
What other shout-outs you got? Any shout-outs?
We're going to do shout-outs to all our people racing this weekend. Big Frog over in Chattanooga.
Good luck.
A really tough day of racing. 64 miles, I believe, right at 64, 65 miles, 8,500 feet of climbing or so.
It's a lot. We got a few people going over.
Most of
Take on the challenge.
Well, all of the people are coming, or that are going, are from West Tennessee. So that's a lot of climbing. In order to get that much climbing here in Memphis,
that's a lot of repeats.
A lot of repeats.
It's a lot of repeats.
Our longest hill's like 100 feet elevation gain.
It's not easy to find anything even close to a minute. I mean, there's a few 1 minute maybe if you take it slow.
Yeah, from a standstill.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should be. We're gonna have more shout outs for them once they come back.
All right, let's get
to it, man.
So, on the topic of fast transitions, I think I need to make an example of why we're even talking about this. You know, multisport is an A to B race, right? The clock doesn't stop when you're changing. You know.
No.
Changing legs.
They don't pause the clock for timeouts like basketball.
No, they don't.
There is no intermission.
And the thing I find that's funny is that people will spend thousands of dollars on helmets, wetsuits, bikes, wheels, equipment, coaches, like everything to maybe, that'll take off a few seconds here and there. Certain things have less advantage than others, but don't ever practice transitions. And it can easily be 1 to 2 to 3 minutes difference between people. And 3 minutes is a podium.
And we're talking more like short course. This isn't like Ironman where you're having to put on sunscreen and do all kinds of crazy stuff in between.
Well, there's always, when I think about transition, I think about the time you spend at your spot. Because there's always every transition area is different. There's always a different distance run from the water. It's always different sizes and different layouts.
Correct.
But what I'm talking about is time. We're trying to maximize the time spent at your spot.
Yes.
Or minimize the time spent at your spot.
Once you hit the rack.
Yeah. So if you look at the pros are at their T1. Most pros aren't wearing wetsuits, especially draft legal. We're not wearing wetsuits, so they're spending literally 8 to 11 seconds at their spot at a T1. And then T2, it's 6 to 8 seconds. And I've watched enough draft legal racing to know, to count it out, and this is the average. They're fast, they're efficient. They have to be, because it means missing, missing a group or whatever.
Yeah.
So when we do a transition clinic, my aim is to get people's time spent at their spot down to 10 seconds in T1 and under 10 in T2. That's the big, my big goal there.
Pain train.
Oh, pain train.
We got the train coming by.
May not be able to hear
us a horn. Give us a horn.
All right. So I have an example to kind of prove this.
Yes.
Okay. So I've prepared some visuals. So I apologize to people who are listening to the podcast. I'll try to talk it out as much as I can.
Future folks.
So I have an example here of what not to do. Here, I'll kind of change camera angle here. This particular setup here is not ideal. This is not the worst I've seen, but not ideal. That you look at here, I'll zoom in on this thing. You'll kind of see the wide breadth of everything that they've laid out. They're all over the place. They're actually encroaching on the bike next to them. Everything's kind of scattered. There's a bag still there. Their bag that they brought all their stuff in is still in the area. The guy next to him, I'm just going to assume it's a guy. We'll call it a guy. We got some gloves in there. Don't know why they're wearing gloves. It's just stuff is everywhere. So for this example, the folks in this, I found their T1 and T2 times. And so for these two people, we're talking 3 minutes in T1, 1:53 in T2, and that's left to right. So this is the one with the green towel. Yeah, and then the one next to them is 1:51 and 1:15. So even just between those two people, you're talking over a minute and a half.
Yeah.
You know, but just between those two.
Yep.
So I'll bring in the third example. So this is, as you can see, much cleaner. Not a whole lot there. Full disclosure, this is my this is my setup.
You knew it was going to be easier to find out what your transition times
This
were
is what
by
you know
using yours?
in an Olympic or sprint race. This is basically what you'll see. You know, not much on the ground, not much in the area. I rarely do shoes on the bike these days, and I'll explain why later. But this, in comparison to the other two, T1 and T2 times, 53 seconds and 45 seconds.
And again, remembering that's not time spent at the spot. That's time from when you enter transition to when you exit transition.
Yep, enter and exit. You know, when you're like running to and from like T1 or running to T1, that's added to your swim time. Mm-hmm. So if you're always angry about your swim time, it's probably because there's a run added to that you're not, you know,
it's not accounted for in the distance of
Sometimes they'll put the transition mats out of the water, but that's kind of a rare thing. Anyway, so 53 and 45. So if you look at the difference in the two, I mean, the difference between myself and the other two, you're talking 2 minutes, over 2 minutes in T1 and over a minute. So that's over 3 minutes faster.
3 minutes faster, yeah, just
in transition.
By being quick in transition.
And then for the second one, it's a minute and 30 seconds, so a minute and a half on the second one. So that is literally time spent in transition and not moving and advancing your position. So
just think of how much work goes into trying to drop, say, 3 minutes off your best 20K bike or 3 minutes off your best 5K or 10K run.
Right.
I mean, that's
it's
a huge PR for anyone.
It's a massive amount of training that goes into taking minutes off of, you know, unless you're like brand new to the sport. But there's a lot of very experienced triathletes out there that have never worked on their transitions. So I think I made my point. So let's jump into the keys of these fast transitions.
The keys.
So this is my number one by far. I'm going to go all Marie Kondo on you.
Ooh, shout out.
If that 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot doesn't spark joy, get it out.
Yeah, for people who don't, you have to Google Marie Kondo if you don't know who she is. But she's essentially, only keep things that bring joy and declutter.
Yeah, the point there is declutter.
Declutter.
Yeah. So having your transition area like totally clean, as little as possible in it is going to help you tremendously. When you bring in your transition bag, pump, whatever you bring in, when you're done setting up your transition area, take it out. I know it's maybe another trip back to the car. Use it as your warm up. Get that stuff out of there because one, it's going to take you longer to decide where everything is. Just having to look at all that junk, and then it's kind of courtesy because you're not like impeding on like the example. You're not impeding on somebody else's space. You know, if you have just tons of junk everywhere. I've had that before where, like, you know, time trial start. You know, you never know who gets out of the water before you. Come up to your bike and like somebody's like goggles are hanging from my like crank arm. Like, so just keep it tight. You know, keep it decluttered. That is the number one thing. The second part of that is organizing your stuff. So I always tell people, organize it in reverse order. So whatever you're going to put on first, like going to T1, whatever you're going to put on first is the first thing that you come to. So your helmet, like if it's, you know, that's usually the first thing you put on. Or if there's shades, if you have glasses in your helmet, glasses in the helmet, they go on first, then the helmet. But think through it and put it in order of what you're going to put on and take off.
So even go deeper into that. So let's say, you know, we got Memphis in May coming up, sprint, Olympic, what order do you have it? Number one is you got glasses or no glasses?
I use the shield on my helmet, so it's already on the helmet in place. I don't mess with flipping the shield. I already have it in the spot.
And practice doing that. Kind of side note, practice putting that on.
That's a huge thing.
Putting it on quickly.
Like I've lost tons of time before screwing with a buckle.
Yep.
But if you practice with it, it's not so hard. But so personally, I've kind of got it down to a science now where I put my helmet. I don't put the helmet on the bars anymore because I've had my helmet knocked off before, either by wind or by another racer or whatever. So helmet goes on my shoes, on top of my bike shoes, and I'll explain why my bike shoes are not on my bike later. But helmet on top of bike shoes, helmet goes on first, and then I'm already bent over, so the shoes go on second, and then I'm out. Everything else is on the bike. Like,
what about socks though?
I don't wear socks. No socks, man.
No socks.
People, no socks.
And also something to work on. If you're someone who feels like you have to have socks on, start working.
Train without them.
Yeah. Into your training, train without them, and get used to not. Because that's. I just hate putting on wet socks when I get out of the shower.
Yeah.
Let alone trying to rush through it to put it on fast and trying to get your feet all dried off and messing around with all that. That's 45 seconds right there.
Yeah, well, putting on anything wet is tough. It's a lot tougher. Mm-hmm. Like, putting on wet clothing is like a nightmare. Mm-hmm. So practice without it. Just train without it, and then when you get to race day, putting on shoes won't be so tough for you. Like, practice with it. I had somebody today text me, they had a bunch of blisters on their feet because they were training, and I immediately asked, well, did you train with them sockless? And this was a fluke thing, but that's like my first thing I ask is, well, have you ran in them sockless before?
Yeah.
Sometimes shoes take a little time to break in.
Oh.
Running shoes or cycling shoes.
And your feet, need to get calloused up a little bit in certain rub spots possibly.
And cycling shoes are so stiff that, they're not going to give when there's movement in the shoe. Yeah. So you're going to there's more chance if the shoe doesn't fit properly, you're going to get blisters.
Yeah. And now backing things up just a little bit. So if it's a wetsuit legal race, you're wearing wetsuit.
Yeah. So coming out of the T1, you're the wetsuit's like halfway down before you even get into transition.
So as you're running to your transition spot, that's when you should be getting halfway done.
I go goggles up so that I don't have to carry them, and then get the wetsuit off and halfway down, and then I'll pull the goggles off and the hat off, the cap off while I'm running. And then as soon as I get to my spot, it's the rest of the way down, step on one leg, pull the other leg out, step on the other leg, pull the other leg out. And then as quickly and efficiently as you can, get that wetsuit in a spot that's not sitting out in the middle of...
Throw it over your biggest competitor's stuff, correct?
Exactly.
Good.
Yeah, throw it into their spot. You can actually get penalties for having a cluttered transition area. So try to keep it neat. The wetsuit is like the slowest part of T1, obviously, if you do have a wetsuit on. So practice taking it off. I mean, you have to practice with it.
And stepping on it is kind of the huge thing
there.
Yeah,
step on the leg.
You should not have to sit down and be trying to manhandle the wetsuit.
Yes.
All right, so wetsuit's off. You got helmet.
Yeah, if you got glasses, they go on first.
Shoes are on.
Helmet, shoes, and then you're out. Everything else should be on the bike. Mm-hmm. So that's part of organizing your stuff. Everything on the bike, nutrition, bottles, everything. Anything else you're going to need for the bike. Now, if you're doing long course, Ironman, half Ironman, and you're in a situation where you get those bags, you have transition bags, organize those bags by what you're going to put on. So put the last thing you're going to put on in the bottom and then build it up from there so that you can put them on in order and you don't have to do what everybody else does. Open your bag and dump it on the ground and start digging through your stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you end up, taking up all this space in the tent and
you're stressed out.
Yeah. And it's way more stressful than just pulling out. Okay. Got it. And they come out in order. Just think through it a little bit and it's going to help you get out a lot faster. Ironman and half Ironman transitions can be 3, 4, 5+ minutes. I mean, if you're not good at it, or you haven't planned it well, I mean, they can be 10 minutes.
Yep.
I mean, be a long time. I mean, longer than that. But generally, if you have everything worked out, it's
this ultimately matters at the end of the day when you're like now looking through your overall results, and you didn't think it mattered until you saw the person that beat you by, you may have jumped 15 spots just by being
easily in long course. I mean, short course, races are decided by seconds.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even a couple of minutes, and you lose that in or age group placing or whatever. It's easy. It's easy to lose it and not even think about that as time. Time, people. All right. So one thing, the next part, besides getting organized and having everything, putting everything on in order, mark your spot. Mark your spot.
Shout out to my pops.
Yeah.
His first try he did, he did not know where his spot was.
Yep.
And I'm like on the sidelines, over there.
So, you can do anything from, like, a lot of people will do chalk. Some people, like, they will lay down a colored towel or something that they can recognize. They'll do something in the mid line of the, like, up the middle way of the transition area to show what aisle they're on. Sometimes, like the bigger events, they'll like letter or number the aisles. It's just whatever you can do to remember your spot. Like, I don't think you can like I guess I have seen some smaller races where you throw a balloon up in the, yeah.
There we go.
But
so unicorn balloon, you're not going to see too many of those out there.
Yeah.
Go with the unicorn balloon.
And my tip here is don't trust your gear to be what sets your spot apart.
Yep.
Last year, coming in off of the bike, I'd pushed the bike pretty hard, and I was a little loopy, and came into T2 at a race in town, and put my bike up, saw my blue shoes on the ground, put those blue shoes on, took 3 steps, and I'm like, these shoes are too big. Literally put the wrong shoes on, and they weren't even the same brand. Like,
you saw blue.
I just saw blue shoes, and I was just thinking about get out. And yeah, even people have been doing it for years make mistakes.
So in line with this marking your spot, so say, do you have a spot, if it's open selection, you get there, you can choose where you put all of your gear. Do you have a certain spot you like to do? Do you like to be closer to where you are running out, closer to where the bike's going out? If they're 2 different spots,
if it's 2 different spots, it doesn't really matter because you're going to run farther with one than the other. Like, I don't really get bent out of shape being closer to the bike exit or the run exit.
Okay.
As far as that goes, but what I do is I'll go to the side. I will make sure that my bike is racked in the direction of the bike out. If you get a choice. Your bike racked toward the bike out, and on the side of the transition area where you would come to it on the same side that you run on. So you always rack the back wheel if you're in a wheel rack. Rack the back wheel, and I will go usually if the bike out, is say south. I'll go on the coming in. I'll go to the left side because I run on the bike on the right. So I always run on my right side of the bike. So if you're going to run and mount that on that side, that's you're going to want to set up opposite so that you can get quickly on the bike and not have to like walk around the bike, get your stuff, walk back, or flip the bike around and then get out. It's just a seamless. You're there, put the stuff on, and then start running with the bike. If you have a choice, you can get closest to the middle aisle of. Or a middle aisle. That's obviously a little bit quicker.
And not trying to go deep into the rack.
Right.
So closer to the center versus...
Yep. I'll sacrifice the bike direction for a few spots on the rack. So if the first, the end cap spots are already taken, I'll go in 1 or 2 spots just so I can rack my bike in the direction that I want to rack it. Because it's always faster if you can't get the end cap to not have to go running around the bike, put your stuff on, or flip the bike around or anything like that. So don't worry too much about that kind of stuff. Marking your spot, big.
Yes.
It'll save you some embarrassment.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when you go to the airport for a trip and you forget to like write down where you've parked.
Yeah,
and now you're
exactly
going like.
I actually got away. I thought I got away with that whole shoe debacle. I actually won the race, which was I would have been really mad if I had. Yeah. So
lost by 5 seconds.
Yeah. So I thought I got away with it, and then all of a sudden somebody comes up to me way after the race, and they were came up real nice, and they were kind of whispered. They were like, "Did you put the wrong shoes on?"
Were they watching or what?
I was like, "Ah!"
Or was it the person whose shoes that they watched? Oh, yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. That was only 1 year ago.
Hilarious. That's funny.
All right, so moving on. One of the biggest skills that you can learn for quick transitions is the flying mount and dismount. And a lot of people are super intimidated by both.
Yep.
But it is, you're talking, if you slow down, have to brake, come to a complete stop, step over the bike, and then start running, it's easily a few seconds lost. And then you do that going out and coming in on the bike, that's another, 10 seconds or so. So learning the flying mount and dismount is huge, and I can't really go into a ton of detail on it without showing it, but practice it. You can even look up some YouTube videos or something on cyclocross mounts and how to mount a cyclocross bike, because it's pretty similar. But my big tip on the dismount is to make sure that, two things. One, you bring your rear leg in front, or you bring your unclipped. There we go. The main, or the foot that came over. Sorry, the foot came over the bar. Okay, yep. Over the top tube. Now goes in front, and I'll show. I have a little bit of an example here. Bam. So foot that came over the bike goes in front. That way you can step straight down and just immediately start running. So I've seen that's the big difference between a cyclocross dismount and a triathlon dismount. Cyclocross dismount, a lot of times you're trying to dismount closest to barrier, and so you're trying to pop up as soon as you hit the ground. Whereas here, you're just trying to start running a straight line as quick as you can. So crossing in front and stepping straight down, you'll immediately start that stride cycle quicker. So that's my tip for the dismount. I fancy myself a fast.
They all tend to dismount. Have. If he's not the fastest dismounter, he's usually it's a tie.
It's a pride thing.
It is
at this point. My second big tip for dismounting is when you're feathering both brakes coming into the dismount line. As soon as you start that step down, let go of them. Let go of the brakes. Take your hands off them.
Do not touch the front brake, whatever you do.
No, just take your hands off both brakes. Mm-hmm. Just keep light pressure on the bars with your thumbs, because within 2 steps, you should transition to the seat anyways. And that's my third tip for mounting and dismounting the bike, is always run with the bike by the seat.
I was gonna ask you that.
Yeah, always run with the bike by the seat. And you have to practice that, because at first it's a little awkward, but you'll find that you can actually steer the bike pretty well.
Yeah, just with
the lean in the seat. And the faster you're running, the straighter the line that thing's going to hold. Mm-hmm. But let go of those brakes. If you ever want some entertainment, and you're spectating a race, go to the dismount line.
Well, that picture you saw is actually a picture I took because I knew the good spot to be was to take pictures at the dismount line. Yeah. That's where the action happens.
Yeah, the dismount line is usually either entertaining to watch because people are really good at it, or entertaining to watch because it goes horribly wrong. It's like NASCAR, just waiting for the wrecks to happen. Uh-huh. So this next tip here is what a lot of people tell me when we do transition clinics. Was the biggest difference, and it's so simple. When you get into T2, you rack your bike, right? You should not have shoes on because you've already learned how to do the flying dismount without shoes on. So
now, do you take feet out? You take feet out, right?
Yep.
For those that didn't see the picture.
Yeah, picture.
So Dale mentioned he goes
no
shoes on when he's leaving transition.
We take
mounts with shoes already tightened up, but coming out as you're entering transition, you're taking your feet out of your shoes and placing them just on top of the shoes.
Yep. So, always dismount without shoes on, and then run into T2. So rack the bike, helmet off, and then you slip your shoes on, and then anything else that's in transition, you grab it and go. It's the old T2 grab and go.
Grab and go, man.
Like helmet off, bike rack, helmet off, slip your shoes on. If you have hats, nutrition, glasses, your number. People think that they have to clip their number on their waist before they leave transition. You don't. There's no rule on that. So grab everything, and I usually keep mine in like one bunch. So like I'll have my hat, like my number, like everything in one bunch, so I can just grab it with one hand and start running. And then I'll just start putting dressing myself while I'm running and making progress. Like, so that's a huge thing for a lot of people. Other big thing is your bike check. When you leave transition to go to the swim start, just do one last little quick check of the bike. I usually put my bike in the small chainring, mainly because it allows me to like get my legs kind of opened up, like getting like on the really first part of the bike. And I don't stay in it very long, but just get the legs loosened up on a higher cadence spin. But if you're doing a race with wheel racks, and you have your bike in the big chainring, that rear derailleur hanging down farther because the chain tension's higher can actually catch on that. It can catch on the rack. So I just do it for just in case.
To help get that
derailleur up out of the way of the wheel rack. But also you just check your tires real quick, because in your warm up you could have hit something that started a slow leak or whatever. Check them and just make sure your bike is in place before you head out, because the worst thing is coming in from T1 and realizing either you have a flat or your bike has some sort of a mechanical problem.
And know, in line with that gear choice thing, know what the terrain is going to be like as soon as you leave. So like Memphis in May, you start up a hill.
Yep.
So maybe you are in your big ring in the front, and if you'd been doing your warm-up ride and you shift into that big gear as you're going down that little hill, not even realizing it, and now you're starting in a 53.12, it's not going to be good trying to get up that hill. You're going to waste a lot of time. In fact, I've seen people fall over in transition because they are in this huge gear, and they go to take that first pedal stroke and don't go anywhere because the gear's too big. And
just flop.
Yeah. So gear choice is huge.
Gear choice in the rack. The last big thing is really just practicing. It's not really a tip. It's more of like, you got to do it. Like you're not going to get fast at transitions doing it on race day alone, because there's so much like mental clutter that happens when you're in a race that you're just not going to like be able to focus on it. So if you just make it second nature by practicing it over and over, it'll just be like a well-oiled machine, and you'll just get in and out, and it's not a source of another source of stress or anxiety, and it probably will help your overall performance because your stress levels are lower. So just practice.
Definitely. One thing I wanted to go back to real quick, has there ever been a race where you're dismounting, the surface has been in a condition where you don't want to dismount without some sort of coverage for your foot protection? So have you ever chosen to leave shoes on because either there's gravel or rocks, or
not really?
Just tough it up.
Normally a race will like sweep the dismount area pretty well. There has been some transition areas where after you dismount and you run in, you're like stepping on gravel, barefoot, and all that kind of stuff, and it's not real comfortable. But normally they're pretty good. I mean, there's been years where, like, one year at Memphis in May when it just flooded, like absolutely monsooned, and the transition area was just like a marsh. So a lot of people were like carrying everything, like including their bike, like carrying everything out of transition and putting it on outside once they got onto the pavement. But I think that year too, I even dismounted without shoes and just slopped through the mud. I mean, I had muddy feet, but
they were going to get muddy anyway.
They were going to get muddy anyways. Yeah. And actually, I ran through a few puddles on the way out and cleaned everything out. So, yeah, rarely do you want to, obviously scope out the dismount area. And if it's dangerous, you can make that choice for yourself, but I still think it's faster. So, I already talked about, just a few more bonus tips here. I already talked about direction, racking your bike in a specific direction if you have a choice. Running with the seat in your hand, practice that one. Yep. Like flying dismount, we already talked about that, and crossing the leg in front, making sure that you let go of the brakes when you're stepping down. The last little thing I want to talk about is, because I get asked about it a lot, is why don't you put your shoes on the bike when you're in T1? The reason I don't put my shoes on the bike
anymore, because you used to.
I did it first because that's what the pros were doing.
So it's not like you haven't tried both ways.
I have tried both, a lot actually. The problem always was that when I would get out of transition, and even though I was really good at mounting a bike, I raced cyclocross and all that stuff, I could never get the shoes opened wide enough to where I could just hit my foot right in that shoe, like, easy peasy. Or even like, once you step on the top of one and those little rubber bands break, a lot of times you're still having to like wait for the other one to do this little stupid swingy thing. And then you can put your other foot on top and you'll start to pedal for a little bit, and then you stop pedaling to put the one on, and then you pedal for a little bit, and then you stop, and you're not really putting out a lot of effort. So you're kind of wasting the first part of your bike leg. And sometimes even like I'd go and jump in and try to hit, and then like when the shoe would come around, it like hit the ground and start this like death spiral thing. I just never had really good luck with it. And I practiced it a lot. But I can put my shoes on in transition and run fine in my bike shoes out of transition. And then when I mount the bike, leg goes over, contacts the pedal, and then within a half a pedal stroke, I'm producing power and I'm off. The pros, especially draft legal, they do it because like putting their shoes on in transition can mean them missing a group, but they also can like get into the group with their feet on top of the shoes and coast and like not work.
Find an opportunity.
Find the draft and put the shoes on. So yeah, it does make sense for them. But I would say personally, having tried it a lot, it doesn't necessarily make sense for the average, even upper end amateur. Like I really think if you practice the mount, you can put there's one strap on those shoes. It's pop, you're gone. You're running with it, and then you're producing speed and force so much sooner on the bike.
And getting into a flow much quicker.
Yeah. Legs open up faster. I find like when you jump on the bike and like if you don't hit it perfectly, a lot of times you're going from a run to jumping on the bike and doing nothing. That's where your heart rate spikes, and then you kind of like gradually get it, and then you stop, so your heart rate's up again. So you have this like big like heart rate roller coaster going, trying to get your shoes in, or your feet in your shoes. Whereas I can just go, mount the bike, and I'm off, and I'm going from a run to a steady hard effort, and it's similar effort levels. So that's my tip. You could argue with me all you want if you want to, swear it's faster. Let's do it. Let's test it.
Race it out?
Yeah, let's test it. But if you practice that mount, the flying mount, and you can do it and hit the pedal, no way. I'll put my money on shoes in T1 any day.
To first mile?
Yeah, let's do it.
I like it. Just going back to for when you mentioned, for those that are wanting to do bikes on, you mentioned the rubber band. That may be confusing to a beginner that's never done this before.
So a lot of times there's like in the back of the shoe, there's like a little loop, and you'll put a little rubber band, like a little like hair rubber band or whatever. Some people use like the braces ones or whatever. And you'll wrap basically one around like the front derailleur, little the extra cable that sticks out. You can just wrap it around there, and it holds the shoe in place. Or some people will launch a rubber band all the way back to their skewer to try to keep the shoes level, so that when they jump on the bike, they can just put their feet straight down, either in or on top of the shoes, and start pedaling with their feet just like they would be if they were dismounting the bike. But again, once you put your feet down on those shoes, you collapse the shoe. Mm-hmm. And so when you want to get the foot in, you have to now have one foot down. You got to wait for that shoe to stop swinging, and then wiggle your foot into that collapsed shoe, pull it on, strap it down, and then pedal some and start over the other side. Mm-hmm. I can put my shoes on in T1 in 2.5 seconds and not have to, like, all the time I would waste sitting there, fumble with shoe on left and right shoe.
Riding with one hand, trying to strap.
Right. It's just not, it's
looking
not worth
down,
it.
not looking up the road, just from a safety standpoint.
It's not worth it.
All right.
Argue with me. Dare you.
Do it. Do it to it. Is that all of it?
That's it, man. I tried to keep it pretty to the point. I could probably go on and on, but...
I think if people have questions after, just shoot them to us.
So there you have it. We appreciate you guys hanging out, listening, watching. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
Stitch stayed quiet the whole time. Big ups.
The dog did not lose it. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Stitch. All right, guys. We'll catch you guys next time. Adios. Peace.